Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for looking in again. This is just a quick build of this Kinetic 1/48 scale Reaper unmanned aerial vehicle. It's a pretty simple kit. I actually did this one over on my Patreon channel for a series that I'm doing there on tools and techniques that I use when I'm building. But the full build video is this one. So as I said, it's a pretty simple kit. There's just 5 sprues in it, and in no time at all, once you've got the wings and fuselage cut off, you've already freed up 2 sprues. It has got a very simple undercarriage bay, just 2 bays. But I added a little bit of detail to this by just boxing in the rear part of the bay. You are able to look through from side to side, but I put a rear bulkhead in and just boxed it in a little bit. The wings are a simple 2-part affair for each side. No separate control surfaces or anything like that. No wheelbase to go in here. So just simply glued together. Just test fitting the fuselage. You can see there where I've boxed the rear part of the bay in. Kinetic don't give you any instruction about putting any nose weight in the model, but just to be sure, I added some ball bearings fixed with some CA, some thin CA, just dropped in. I'm not sure how much I put in, but probably in the region of 15 grams, something like that. And I just fixed them in place with some activator. At that stage you can get the wings installed. You glue them together, as you can see, and that maintains a nice level stance to the wings. And you can see I'm just checking the balance by tacking all the pieces in place, and just checking that those nose weights are going to work. To clean up of the mating surfaces, we can finally glue the wings together using those really strong tabs. And I just set those aside to dry for a second before fitting them into the fuselage. And that's the first main part of the assembly done within 4 instruction stages. Just add to the Contactor Professional by adding some extra thin in there as well, just to wick in, make sure you've got a really strong join. This is the engine nacelle, and what I've done here is just add some milliput, some white milliput, and before that's set, just clear it out with a blunt cocktail stick just to form the intake and the exhaust. Otherwise you're just looking through into an empty space. So that's just a little simple modification that you can use just to improve the engine. Can pop that on now. All the parts in the kit are a really nice fit, go together without any real gaps. The stabilizers are simple 1-part pieces. Some really thick tabs on these just to make sure that you get the correct incidence of the tailplanes. Just a little bit of rescribing, and actually the area around the top panel here at the front of the nose, I just emphasise that scribing a little bit. Just some Mr. Surfacer 500 here into the very fine gaps. They're just really pin lines, really. Mr. Surfacer just fills those in just to get a better finish on the model. We've got some separate navigation lights, which I'll paint later on. I just like to glue these in position and fare them in, just sand them in, just to make sure they look integral to the wing rather than added on later. This is the fin which is on the underside of the aircraft. Just using some lacquer thinners just to clean up the Mr. Surfacer in the joins. That leaves a really nice finish. Make sure there's no gaps in the model. Polishing those navigation lights now, just to make sure that they're perfectly smooth into the rest of the wing. This is the very finest micro mesh to polish them up and then mask them off straight away. Just going around now with some Tamiya sanding sponge just to clean up, ready for the paintwork. The model's had an overall coat of Mr. Surfacer 1500 grey, and I'm just polishing that primer back just to get a nice finish ready for the top coats, which I've applied here. And I've used XF19, Tamiya XF19 acrylic for the top surfaces, and Tamiya acrylic light grey XF66 for the underside. Not an exact match, but they're as near as I wanted to get for this particular model. And I've given it a coat of LP9 lacquer gloss varnish ready for the decals, which are really nice quality. They're made by Cartograph, printed by Cartograph, designed by Cross Delta. And you do need to be a little bit careful with them. They're extremely thin, which is good, but you just need to take a little bit of care not to get them to turn over. I did with one of the stars and bars on the fuselage and had to remove it and reapply it. Just managed to save it. It gently does it. They do respond nicely to microsol, which I'm putting on here. And just lay them down on a light coat of microset. These are possibly the most difficult decals, so you've got a set there of several of the what I presume are fuel fillers and sensors, and the white circles have to line up onto some raised mouldings on the top of the fuselage. So they need to settle down, they need to be positioned exactly so they're completely centred on the moulding, and then use some microsol to bed them down. I decided to go with this particular version just because the tail surfaces had plenty of markings on them, just to add a little bit more interest. It's a fairly plain model otherwise, and these decals just lift it a little bit, I think. I did toy with the idea of doing an RAF version, but by the time you've put the few roundels and a couple of fin flashes on. There's not much else to show for your work. Just highlighting the control surfaces with some AK panel liner. This is the panel liner for grey and blue camouflage. Just a pin wash. I'm not going all over. These aircraft were kept pretty clean on the photographs I've got of them. So again, just to break up the monotony of the grey, you do need a little bit of work on the panels just to bring the form of the model out, really. This is some lacquer clear red, and I'm using clear blue for the starboard side. Just to touch in the nav lights. I prefer the lacquer version of Tamiya clear paint because it just takes a little bit longer to dry. It goes on a bit smoother than the standard acrylic clears. Just preparing the rest of the, let's call them detail parts. These are the pylons. I think the pylons and the stores took a little bit longer to build than the rest of the aircraft. Nice details from Kinetic. This isn't, I don't think, their own production. I think they've bought some moulds from another manufacturer. I just can't remember offhand who originally moulded this kit. Bringing together the GBUs. I think the GBU-12s. They're not too bad out of the box. You could get some resin aftermarket if you were really keen on making the model a little bit more accurate, but this was really just a test bed, as I said, for a techniques video. These are the Hellfire X. At this stage, I just like to get all the rest of the parts cut off, cleaned up, and put out ready for painting, and then bring them all together towards the end. The wheels are a hub or a wheel and two halves to the tyres, which could help you with painting if you wanted to paint the tyres separately, but I decided just to assemble them and paint them as a whole. They're a simple affair, just a white hub. This is perhaps possibly, if there is a weakness in the kit, it's the undercarriage, just because of its nature. They're very spindly, the legs. And I had quite a bit of trouble getting the incidence of these right, just to make the model sit horizontally. If you don't do that, the length of the wings really exaggerates the mistake if you don't get them perfectly aligned. Fixing them in with some CA. And there's a couple little retraction jacks at the back which set the angle for you and also add a little bit of strength. The nose legs are one-piece assembly, needs careful painting because of that. There's no separate wheel. Time to get the stores together now. Everything's a really good fit. It's a really nice model to put together. It's one of those models that it's nice to do as an interim between more complicated builds. I've just come off the back of an Italeri 132 scale Tornado, which took the best part of 6 months. And I'm in the middle of a Border Models 132 scale Lancaster. So a build like this really just makes a change, gives you something to put on the shelf pretty quickly once you're in the middle of those longer projects. Load the aircraft up. It surprises me that an aircraft that looks so flimsy really is able to carry this sort of payload. When I started the kit, I was doing a little bit of reading up on them, of not an aircraft that I'm familiar with at all. And I was surprised how long they've been in service. A couple of decades now, I think, something like that. Got some little, presumer, pitot tubes, and this is the main sensor that I'm fitting now, just using a bit of clear green to back up the lens. In reality, this sensor had 3 or 4 lenses on it, which you could replicate if you wanted to with a bit of acetate. Because this was a quick build, I didn't bother doing that. Just using some canopy glue to add the lens on the main lens on the front of the sensor. The other ones are smaller and round. Fix it in on the nose, on the chin. Last details now. I've no idea what these are. But they're a nice fit just to finish the model off. The propeller is painted up, and I've used some of AK's Extreme Metal colours to do the spinner. This is in a polished aluminium. I initially used AK's Chrome, but it was a little bit too bright. So I just toned it down a bit with polished aluminium from that range. Really nice paints. It's my go-to for metallics now. Glue the prop into position. There's no facility in the kit to have it spinning. I managed to break off the probe at the front here, so I'm replacing it with some nickel silver tube in 2 gauges, one that slides into the other. It's much stronger than the original plastic and quite a bit finer, so it just adds that bit of refinement to the finished model. You can see it there. So there we are, all done. It probably took me 6 or 7 days altogether, on and off, which for me is very rapid, and it was very enjoyable. It's an unusual subject, looks nice on the shelf, a little bit different, and if you want, as I said, a quick build just to restore the mojo, it's an ideal kit to do just that. So I'll finish off with a few final photographs, everybody, and in the meantime, look after yourselves. See you soon. Bye for now.